Greetings, my Rantians. Hope you all are doing well today, and welcome to another tier list using Tier Maker. Today, we'll be discussing the Harbour Defenses of Anno 1800. Kind of going to be on the smaller end because there's not too many of them there. However, still a very important area of the game to be brought up to speed on, because I feel like Harbour Defenses are kind of slept on as far as what can these things really do, which ones are the best, which ones aren't, etc., etc. So that's why I really wanted to talk about them. Before we start, though, of course, naturally, these are my opinions on these particular harbor defenses, and we might have a difference of opinion. That's totally fine. And you know what? That's just life. But if we have a difference of opinion, all I ask is that we're respectful with one another in the comment section, and that you are respectful to every single other person that's commenting too. You guys have been doing that already. I don't need to say anything more. So, along with that, if you're new to the channel, please consider checking it out. We just finished a expert campaign series, The Rise of the Rantian Imperium, which is essentially the kick-off of my channel, because I like to incorporate roleplay into my content. And if you'd like to check it out, 195 episodes right over there. You will actually see my own progression from somebody who had no idea how to edit videos up until the very end. Kind of cool, along with what I like to consider my chaotic era, which I used to cuss like a sailor like no tomorrow. Sometimes the occasional thing comes out, but that's just me. It is what it is. You want to make that commitment to also subscribe to the channel. I very, very much appreciate it. One might say I'd be quite penetrated by your kindness. And you can check out the Discord and Instagram while you're at it. Totally cool. Harbour Defenses. How are we going to actually explain the criteria that we're going to be using? Well, I have mentioned a couple times before, and if you're new here, you wouldn't know this, but I will explain it now. I always like to have a return on investment be better, be effective. And that is what I'm going to be really basing these Harbour Defenses on. Specifically, I'm not going to mention that, well, actually, let's frame it this way. Every single one of these harbor defenses can be cheesed. If you properly position your fleet and you optimize your fleets to have increased range, you're more than likely capable of outranging almost every single one of these harbor defenses. I'm going to start off by saying that. However, for the purposes of this tier list, I'm going to mention that you haven't optimized your fleet and therefore would be in the line of fire for pretty much almost every single one of them. Because there's only one on this list that's not going to actually pertain to ships, but would pertain to airships. And the only one that pertains to airships is the only one that can be capable of bringing them down. The other harbor defenses won't do that. Along with that, the amount of resources and the effectiveness of that particular harbor defense for longevity's sake should also be taken into account. Because you don't want to be putting one down, and especially if you're on like an expert difficulty mode or a higher difficulty mode where you don't get all of your investment back, then that is going to just, it's going to poof and go away. You're going to have to make more and then rebuild something else. The cool thing is with majority of these, you only need the basic weapons, which is like, would you consider workers to be early game? It's like getting close to mid to late until you get to advanced weapons. And then advanced weapons obviously are going to take the precedence on that one, but not all the time. And we're going to talk about that right now. The very first harbor defense here is the mounted gun. Now, I have been really thinking about this one. And truth be told, I put it in decent, but it is borderline a waste of resources for me. But decent should be okay. Let me explain this. The mounted gun is essentially the easiest one, the first one that you can make. This one is good just as a deterrent against smaller ships. Let's say for all intents and purposes, you've gone up against some really difficult AI. And I think I should mention this to start off. Mounted guns in any shape or form, any of these ones, any harbor defense, also supplement your military standing. So it's not only your fleet that's going to be enhancing it, the harbor defenses that you put in place are also going to be doing so. That being said, would I recommend that you spam a whole bunch of these on your islands like the NPCs do? No, I don't, because you're going to have resources be put into them. Influence is one of them, and influence, if you're not careful about, farming influence, how to get influence on a decent degree, then you might find yourself running out, and harbor defenses are only meant as a defense force until your fleet can come in and mop up. That's really what they're meant for. But the mounted gun itself, it's really good against like schooners, gunboats, deterring gunboats from actually attacking. It can really go toe to toe to a point with a frigate. A frigate might get deterred if they see like maybe two mounted guns next to one another. Personally, I don't really make them. The only time that I really have is when Arhant forced me to do it in the campaign mode. I have to build like two mounted guns and two cannon towers, and just, in order to protect the queen, which we completely overthrew. And she's currently in house arrest in Rantium's Harbor. But at the same time, would I say that it's definitely a harbor defense that you can potentially build when you're in a bind? Yeah, sure, you can. But I would argue that the next one on this list is going to be more effective and can be more effective throughout the longevity of the game, being the cannon tower. And I put the cannon tower at effective. This one is good because it can deal a decent amount of damage against ships of the line, frigates, and even the occasional monitor. I feel because monitors do have relatively low hull strength. The cool thing with the cannon tower is that it will dish out a beefy amount of damage. Not a crazy amount, but you can optimize these things to be a lot better too, with Harbor Master items and all that good stuff. But for the sake of this, using their base values, the cannon tower, while it is slower than the mounted gun, is a pretty decent deterrent. The reason why I mentioned that is if you build a new harbor, for example, on an island, you immediately start off with a cannon tower on that island through the main harbor. And that thing is capable of dealing enough damage to actually deter, for example, small, like maybe 3 gunboats from attacking it. It'll destroy one, almost destroy the second one, and the AI is going to be like, yep, we're getting the hell out of here because this thing is actually dealing some damage. What I would recommend is when you're building harbor defenses, really determine which of your islands are going to be the main hubs you want to protect. Because a cannon tower, you can put like 3 or 4 of them down, and they will deal a lot of damage for you. And you can choose to upgrade them. You can choose to like get rid of them in favor of like a gun later on, or just because you need the influence and the resources, doesn't matter. But altogether, they are the solid pick for like the mid going into the late game. And even like the moment you can actually unlock them, and I believe that's through Artisan tier, you would be seeing some ships of the line. You would be seeing some frigates. If you really want the pirates to get off you, these ones are the ones to really build. Again, 3 to 4 on an island that you really want to protect, that should be just enough. The next one on this list, I'm going to be starting it off like this, is probably the most busted harbor defense in this game. And it is really slept on. It took me completely by surprise, and that is the Flame Tower. This thing is very powerful. Not just very powerful against wooden hulled ships, but against ironclad type ships too. Let me explain. On paper, the Flamethrower Tower is supposed to deal increased damage against wooden hulled ships. That's understandable. It's literally belching fire. It's like a dragon just going and mowing down every single ship in its wake. But that's not all it does. What the Flamethrower Tower honestly does, I think is even more powerful, is it inflicts a damage over time or dot ability, or dot debuff, excuse me, on the target that it's honing in on. So, for example, I had to go up against Margaret Hunt. She loves to spam 2 things: Big Betties and Flamethrower Towers. She is insane with the amount of harbor defenses she has. And the Flamethrower Tower caught me completely by surprise. This comes from basic weapons, by the way. This thing has the capability of doing crit damage on a battle cruiser. Be very careful about it. Very, very careful. It will inflict a damage over time debuff onto that particular target, and eventually, like, it will say like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. It might say something different, but there's a little fire emblem, and it's like causing the actual, like, if you click on the ship, let's say your ship's name is the Aura. You click on the Aura, and the entirety of the right-hand side, being the information text, is like on fire. That is what it's telling you, that this ship is now on fire and it is compromised. It's going to have a slower speed because naturally its engines are being compromised. Its entire hull integrity is being compromised. The more damage that ship takes, the slower they'll be. And naturally, the dot damage might lead to a point, if that ship is like around 100 HP or something, it could easily sink. Just to explain how powerful dot damage can be, a lot of MMORPGs, for example, I know I'm kind of jumping into another spectrum here, but I really want to explain this the best way I know how. I play a lot of MMORPGs throughout my life, like Star Wars The Old Republic, Final Fantasy XIV, the MMORPG by Square Enix with a road to 70 or 80 now? I don't even know. With the critically acclaimed Stormblood DLC. Yeah, you know that meme? Those particular MMOs, mostly Star Wars The Old Republic, the characters and the jobs that had the damage over time abilities were the ones, in my experience, the ones that would get nerfed the most. And the reason for that is you have two sides of the spectrum. You're dealing burst damage on one hand, and then you're dealing additional damage on the other. The additional damage is going to continue to tick regardless of whether that particular, ship or the character is actually attacking that particular target for a specific amount of time. In Anno 1800, everything is based on time, and the time that these things are on fire is a decent amount of time. You want to get the hell out of there if you know that one ship is on fire. Here's what I would suggest you do. Screw every other harbor defense out there. You see a flamethrower tower, you need to do some scouting, man. You got to get in close. You better zoom in, hone in on those flamethrower towers. If it's 1 or 2 or 3, pick one, fire. Pick the second one, concentrate fire. Pick the third one, obliterate it. Because these things are going to decimate your fleet regardless of how elite they are. Be very careful about the flamethrower towers. That's the best offer, best explanation I could possibly give. I was completely caught off guard by these things. And I thought the Big Betty was the worst one. I was proven very wrong. But now we have to talk about a DLC type Harbor Defense. Now, I apologize to my console buddies. Just cover your ears for like a second, okay? Just 1 second, because we'll get back to you. We'll get back. We'll pull you all in. The Flak Emplacement comes from the Empire of the Skies DLC, in which the airships were introduced. And this is the only harbor defense that's capable of going toe-to-toe with an airship. Now, they are pretty powerful. They're essentially, they have this big Gatling gun on the top, and they will deal very fast damage towards enemy airships. And I consider them to be pretty effective and a decent deterrent. The only issue is that if, like, for example, your other harbor defenses have been destroyed and there still is a fleet in the harbor trying to fight you, these things are not going to fire on the fleet. They're only going to be specific for airships. As an example, Margaret Hunt loves to spam airships. This is one emplacement that you can put in on islands that you really want to protect, because she has a tendency on being the biggest a-hole and bombing the hell out of your islands. And she's just going to be like, oh, a pleasant little exchange. Just want to go there and be like, But I would say, like, maybe, again, 3 to 4 of these. You can put them kind of close to one another. And, dude, they have a really cool voice actor. I took a break from this game for some time after, before the whole New World Rising stuff came out, and before I actually started, recording stuff for YouTube. I took a break from the game just because I literally played it to death at that point, and I came back and then for the campaign, and I was in the war with her, and I just heard the announcer for this particular, harbor defense be like, "Target lost," and I'm like, "Whoa, what the hell was that?" Because I never heard it before. And then 2 seconds later, target lost. I'm like, all right, dude, I didn't know that the Terminator's in here. Don't come near me. But then I thought about it, and I'm like, oh, it's my Flak Emplacements, because there were a couple of her harpies flying above, and they were not close enough for, like, they were in range for like a second, but then they dipped out. So the Flak Emplacements were telling me that they had, in fact, lost their targets. Really, really cool harbor defense. They have a decent range, so plop a couple of these down. Again, they just use basic weapons. Don't have to use the advanced weapons for these. But going into the advanced weapon category, I'm going to talk about 2 really quick, because that's really all we have left. And the first one is the anti-armor gun. And the anti-armor gun is indeed a very powerful weapon to use. And truth be told, if you want to start phasing out some of your cannon towers in favor of the anti-armor guns, you can do that. The only reason why I'm not putting it in very powerful is while they are indeed extremely effective, I'm going to put this like this. I'm going to explain it like this. They are extremely effective. The problem is their range is a lot. It's not a lot less. It is less than a cannon tower. So you might find that you're putting a whole bunch of these things down, but they're not actually being used because that particular ship is dodging the radius of this particular anti-armor gun. And honestly, like this thing can take out a monitor in like 3 hits. It can take out battle cruisers with ease because their actual buff is significant damage against metal hulled ships. They do also do a ton of damage against the wooden hulled ships. Absolutely. You're shooting a big slug at them, right? But the thing about it is it's just the range. The range with it being lower or closer than that of the cannon tower, it kind of has a little bit of a I'm not sure whether I really want to spam this particular harbor defense a lot. So what you can do is you can have a combination. This is where the combination of different harbor defenses really come to, play here. Cannon towers, anti-armor guns, the flamethrowers, and like maybe a flak emplacement or two if you have that DLC and you're not on console. Console players, first 3, perfect. You will have a pretty decent protected harbor area, especially if that is your capital island. Or let's say you did indeed go ahead and build an industrial island, you would, and you still have NPCs out there that might potentially want to declare war on you. Very important to protect your main centers of industry and your heartlands. So that's why these particular harbor defenses, very, very good. The last one on the list, I also consider this thing to be powerful, but it is like borderline very powerful. So I'll put it in front of the anti-armor gun, and it is the Big Betty. Before the Big Betty was put into this particular tier list, every single one of these harbor defenses, as I mentioned earlier, can be cheesed by simply outranging them with items in your ships. With the Big Betty, you can't do that. 9 times out of 10, it will fire on you before you fire on it. And what it does is splash damage. So it will hone in on one target, deal the maximum amount of damage on that particular target, which it can really chunk the health of a battle cruiser, for example. But then it will also, like shrapnel, bounce off to the other targets that are close in proximity. If you have, let's say, around 20 battle cruisers, and you're going up against a harbor that has flamethrower towers, 2 Big Betties, and a couple cannon towers, here is the priority order. Take out the Big Betty in that situation first, because the Big Betty is going to actually consistently be able to knock HP off of you and really mess you up. But if you're getting, might want to have to sacrifice like a ship or something to actually get aggro off of those flamethrower towers for your main fleet. But the moment that thing goes down, then you focus on those flamethrower towers. And it is possible to have more than one Big Betty on an island. So, in that particular situation, that's when the whole dynamic changes. If you're capable of outranging every single one of the other harbor defenses, and I should have said this for the example earlier, if you're capable of outranging all of them, take out the Big Betties first. If you cannot, take out the flamethrower towers first, then the Big Betties. That'll be the optimal strat to pull, because truth be told, their fire rate is so slow that you will be able to dish out a significant amount of damage, or in fact completely neutralize them in one massive salvo from your ships until they actually fire the second round. If they fire the second round, sure, okay, fine. If they fire the second round, they're not going to kill anything. They don't have enough power in them to destroy a ship in 2 shots. Can they do significant damage to those ships in the 2 shots? Absolutely. But you know what will chunk the health faster than that thing? The flamethrower tower. 100%. It is a constant stream of fire, constantly belched onto your ships. That is what you want to prioritize. So, this was just a very interesting and shorter when it comes to tier list. Now, I am also planning on doing the specialist for trade unions and then for town halls as well. So, we're going to be working on those going through into this week, along with, beauty build episodes for the Anno 1800 expert campaign and all that good stuff. So I just really want to put this out there. I don't really see a lot of people discussing in depth what the harbor defenses are and how powerful some of the ones that you didn't even expect could be, honestly, and their uses. But this is what I personally see as them. There's none that's really a waste of resources. The mounted guns kind of sort of could be there. I don't like to make them, but you might. Tell me how you would. Would you actually want to keep them there, or would you want to phase them out for a cannon tower, or potentially an anti-armor gun, or a flamethrower tower? Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I always enjoy these tier lists, and I know you guys appreciate them as well, and you learned something from them. I've been playing this game for like over 2,000 hours, so you think I might learn a little bit something of this, or, to impose my wisdom upon the masses, absolutely. I'm all for it. I love helping people. So, until next time, my Rantians, thank you so much. Please consider commenting, subscribing, hitting that bell button, sharing it with your friends, of course, and I'll catch you on the next adventure, my Rantians.